The waiter stopped in the middle of the room, as if time had frozen. The clink of cups, the buzz of conversation, and even the smell of hot coffee disappeared for a moment. He held the cup in both hands, his eyes fixed on the small printed label, my name. A name that seemed to carry a weight only he recognized. In that second, I knew something was about to emerge from the past, something I myself had buried as carefully as possible. I just wanted a coffee, a break between meetings, a breather before facing the rest of the day. But that simple gesture became a mirror. And the reflection I saw there wasn't just that of a tired woman. It was that of someone who, without realizing it, was about to open an old wound. The waiter's gaze wavered. I recognized the fear hidden in the hesitation of his fingers. It wasn't just astonishment. It was as if the name written on that paper was a password, a reminder, a ghost. Who did he think I was? Or worse, what did he know about me? There are things we think we've left behind, but they still linger in the air, like the smell of burnt coffee that insists on lingering. Sometimes, fate chooses the most banal moment to confront us. And when this happens, the heart understands before the mind. The danger is back. At that moment, everything inside me screamed silently. Every detail around me seemed charged with meaning. The clock striking noon, the distant sound of a bell, the murmur of people. An ordinary scene, yes, but about to become the stage for a revelation. I took a deep breath, feeling the bitter taste of anticipation. I tried to smile, but the waiter didn't move. He just stared at me as if he saw something that shouldn't be there, as if he saw a forbidden name, a secret exposed. It was then that I realized, what he knew could change everything. What if the past decided to charge me right now, when I finally believed I had started over? That moment lasted longer than it should have. The waiter was still holding the glass, and I could see sweat dripping down the side of the clear plastic. He tried to hide it, adjusting his apron, but the slight tremor in his hands betrayed him. I felt the weight of the gaze of a few people around, curious about what appeared to be nothing more than a late delivery. But there was something invisible there, a tense thread connecting the past to the present, and I was caught in it. I picked up the cup slowly, staring at my name printed in firm letters. It was the same name I'd tried to erase from so many documents, contracts, and stories. The same name that reminded me of a time when being seen meant being hurt. I felt the metallic taste of memory before I even took the first sip. Because sometimes, the taste of memory is stronger than that of coffee. He was still watching me, motionless. That's when I noticed the detail. The name tag hanging from his chest. Last name. The same last name as someone I hadn't seen in over 30 years. And for a moment my body forgot how to breathe. Life has these cruel ironies. Just when you think you've overcome your scars, fate brings someone with the same blood as the one who hurt you. It was as if the past had returned to demand a reckoning, not with shouts, but in the silence of a look. I looked around. The cafe had a welcoming air, with the constant sound of the espresso machine, the sweet aroma of pastries, and that kind of tranquility that was deceptive. Light streamed in through the window, gilding everything, and yet, inside me, everything was gray. With every breath, I tried to mask the memory that insisted on forming. His voice, cold, authoritative, telling me I would never be good enough to carry that name. But now it was there, in clear letters, printed on a glass for the entire room to see. And what had once been a source of shame began to take on a different flavor. That of survival. Come back no one expected. For a few seconds I considered getting up, leaving everything there and disappearing. But something inside me remained. An ancient, subtle strength I barely remembered having. Maybe it was the same instinct that kept me going when the world tried to erase me. Or maybe it was just the desire to finally face everything. Without fear, without escape, without disguise. As he watched me, I realized that the look wasn't just one of astonishment. It was recognition. Maybe regret, maybe fear. I wasn't sure yet, but there was something behind that expression that begged for explanation. And it was in that moment that I understood. Life was offering me a choice. I could ignore what I felt and move on as I always had, or I could finally discover the reason for that tense silence. I brought the glass to my lips and took the first sip. The taste was bitter, strong, almost aggressive. But it was in that bitterness that I felt something blossom. Not revenge yet, just a premonition. Many who follow me here know. There are times when the truth reveals itself in the most banal gestures. And that's why so many people choose to stay, following each revelation, each fragment of a story that, in some way, is also theirs. As the hot coffee ran down my throat, I looked back at him. The tension seemed to mount. And before I could react, he stepped forward, opened his mouth, and said my full name out loud. It was with that sound that everything began to change. When he said my name aloud, the air seemed to split in two. The sound ripped through the room like a crack, cutting through the murmur of conversation and the clink of spoons against porcelain. Some customers looked up, others pretended not to hear, but I felt the impact squarely in my chest. That voice, shaky but firm, carried something I couldn't tell if it was guilt or memory. He looked so young, and yet there was an ancient weight in his gaze. The same kind of weight life leaves on people who inherited stories they didn't choose. And that's when I realized. He wasn't just a waiter. There was a bond, invisible, that spanned time and held us there in plain sight. The coffee grew cold between my fingers, but I couldn't let go of the cup. The drops of condensation ran down, tracing tiny paths across my skin, each one seeming to tell a piece of my story. 30 years fit into that moment. 30 years of silence, of escapes, of exchanged names and closed doors. 30 years of trying not to be remembered. And yet, being remembered was what freed me now. He approached slowly, as if afraid to startle something fragile. But there was no longer any fragility in me. Only firmness. A calm firmness, built over time and pain. When our eyes met, I saw in him a distorted reflection of the past. The same gaze that once judged me, now on a different face, younger, more insecure. "You are," he began, but his voice trailed off and I just stared at him. I neither confirmed nor denied. Sometimes silence is the most powerful answer. A memory flashed inside me. A small office, the cold morning light streaming through the blinds, the dry sound of a pen signing my resignation. And his voice, the man who shared this young man's last name, saying that the company needed a more appropriate image. That was how I lost everything I'd built. My job, my name, my peace. And now, decades later, fate had given me the same name back, in a different form. I wondered if it was coincidence or justice. The young man took a deep breath and said something that made me shiver. "My father talked about you all his life." The floor seemed to disappear for a second. The room slowly spun, and the words echoed coldly, like a reminder of what time cannot erase. "He said you destroyed his life." There was no anger in his voice, only confusion. And behind that confusion, a silent plea for truth. I watched him for a moment too long, and something inside me shifted. The pain, once a knife, became a mirror. His face trembled, torn between duty and doubt. I could see the war raging behind those eyes. The faithful son versus the curious man. And it was in this conflict that I found a strange kind of peace. Because I knew that the truth, sooner or later, always finds a way to emerge. The afternoon light began to shift, casting long shadows across the tables. People resumed their conversations, but the sound seemed distant, muffled, as if we were isolated in another dimension. Time inside followed a different rhythm. I brought the cup to my lips once more, even though the coffee was already cold. I needed something to remind me that I was still there, alive. Each sip brought me back to reality. And in that reality, there was a boy with the surname of the one who erased me, now standing before me, unsure of what he had truly inherited. He tried to speak again, but his throat gave out. I, on the other hand, felt something rising inside me. It wasn't anger. It was something clearer. The realization that this moment wasn't a punishment, but an opportunity. The silence between us grew heavy, almost sacred, until he lowered his eyes, embarrassed, and murmured something I could barely hear. "I didn't know you were still alive." That sentence cut deeper than any insult. because being forgotten is a slow death. But being remembered like that, like a ghost returning, was something I was still learning to bear. I looked around one last time. The sun was setting, and the shadows of the chairs cast patterns on the tiled floor. I thought about getting up, but my legs wouldn't budge. Something told me this meeting wasn't over yet, because sometimes the truth takes a long time to be told. And I felt, with the precision of someone who has suffered too much, that he still had something hidden. Something that could change not only my past, but the fate of both of them. That sentence, "I didn't know you were still alive," hung in the air like a leaf refusing to fall. The silence afterward was so thick that even the sound of the coffee machine seemed to fade. I watched his face, too young to carry that guilt that wasn't his. He looked at me like someone trying to recognize an old portrait, someone told in stories that never quite felt right. I took a deep breath and smelled the warm air of the cafe, mixed with the sweet scent of the pies fresh from the oven. It was a stark contrast, the scent of everyday life trying to mask the bitter taste of old memories. And for a moment, I wondered if he knew what his father had really done. If he knew the truth behind the story he'd grown up hearing. Because children inherit more than surnames. They also inherit stories. Well-told lies, repeated so many times they become solid as stone. And there I was, the shadow of a narrative someone had to distort to continue sleeping in peace. My gaze drifted to the window. Outside, the sun shone through the glass with a golden light, and dust particles danced in the air like tiny ghosts. I thought of how many times I'd wished for a reunion, but not like this. Not with the son who'd stripped me of my dignity with a cold signature and a practiced smile. He watched me silently, waiting for me to say something. I could see the anguish in the way he moved his hands, sometimes clutching his apron, sometimes running his fingers through his hair. There was regret there, even if he couldn't understand why. And perhaps that was what hurt the most, realizing that guilt sometimes changes faces, but remains alive. "What did he tell you about me?" I asked, my voice sounding firmer than I expected. He hesitated. "That you betrayed him. That you lied. That you destroyed him." The words fell one by one, carefully, as if he himself doubted them. I smiled slightly. Not a smile of irony, but of recognition. It was the same version the world chose to believe. Because it's easier to condemn a silent woman than to face the truth of a powerful man. The memory came rushing back. The office, the closed doors, the hushed conversations. The rumor that spread quickly. The looks from colleagues, the whispers in the hallway. No one asked my version. No one wanted to know. It was more convenient to believe his. I looked at the boy and, for the first time, I felt sorry. Not for myself, but for him. For having grown up believing a story made up to protect a guilty party. It was like seeing someone holding a portrait of a man who never existed. "And is he alive?" I asked, breaking the silence. He looked down, muttering something I barely heard. "No. He left 2 years ago." A shiver ran down my spine. For a moment, I felt the ground firm beneath my feet, as if the weight I'd carried for so long began to dissolve. But along with the relief came grief. Not for what was lost, but for what could never be said. He continued. "Before he died, he spoke your name. He said he regretted it. But he never said why." His words pierced me like a cold wind. I thought of all the nights I'd spent in silence, my throat full of truths no one wanted to hear. Now, regret came too late, brought by a messenger who didn't even know what he was carrying. For a moment I wanted to cry. But the tears didn't come. Just a calm, strange feeling, as if time was asking me to listen before judging. I looked at that boy and, instead of seeing the past, I saw a chance. Bridge. Perhaps what I called justice wasn't in punishing, but in allowing truth to breathe. In giving him back something his father took from him. Reality. It's at this point that many feel the urge to support this journey, leaving a silent sign that the message has touched them. Because when life closes its eyes to injustice, sometimes it takes others to keep them open. He stepped a little closer, unsure if he could. The sound of the street outside seemed distant. and in the space between us, suspended like a secret about to be revealed, I sensed something even greater was about to happen, something that would change not only my story, but his as well. He stood there before me, his eyes watery and his breath shallow, as if he'd just lifted a weight he didn't understand. There was something childish in that look, a mixture of guilt and tenderness that disarmed me. His father's death seemed to have left him with a void that no truth could ever completely fill. Still, something inside me wanted to try. I looked at the empty cup and saw the flickering reflection of light on the porcelain bottom. It was curious how everything seemed smaller from above. The cold coffee, the fingerprints, the shadows of the windows on the table. And yet, within that small circle, a lifetime of secrets could fit. I thought of how many times that same hand, now trembling and young, might have served its own father without imagining that, one day, it would also serve the woman he destroyed. Time seemed to stretch. The conversations in the room became a distant murmur, and I felt as if we were trapped in a bubble where past and present mingled. He took a deep breath and said, almost in a whisper, "I found letters." My body reacted before my mind. The words came with the weight of muffled thunder. Letters. Documents, perhaps. Traces, something that had survived oblivion. I stared at him, wordless, and he seemed to grasp the magnitude of what he had just revealed. "They were his," he continued, "kept in a locked wooden box. I found them after he died. Some were addressed to you. Others were his own, as if he were writing to himself." The air grew heavier. Inside, everything in me wanted to retreat, but curiosity was stronger. The truth I'd pursued for so long had now come to me, through the hands of the son you hid it from. He sat down across from me without asking permission, and pulled a yellowed envelope from his apron pocket. The paper looked fragile, worn by age and humidity. The edge was torn, and the smell was the same as old memories kept for too long, a mixture of mold, ink, and longing. When he placed the envelope on the table, I couldn't bring myself to touch it. There was something sacred in that gesture, something that demanded respect. Silence stretched between us, and for a moment, neither of us knew what to do. "I read some," he confessed. "Not all of them. But what I read made me doubt everything I believed." My heart pounded. I felt like I was about to hear my own voice after years of silence. But there was also fear. Fear of reliving what hurt. Fear of confirming what I'd always known. Fear of realizing my regret came too late. I picked up the envelope carefully. The paper felt cold, rough, like skin that time had dried. I opened it slowly, feeling every sound as if the whole world were breathing with me. And there, between the folds of the past, was his name, written in the same firm handwriting that had once signed my sentence. The first sentence cut me to the quick. I never knew how to deal with what I felt for her. Closed my eyes. The words echoed like an ancient whisper, coming from a place where pain and love merge. For a moment, the coffee around me disappeared. I was back in that office, in the scent of new paper, in the distant sound of rain tapping on the window, and in his presence, cold, commanding, but also confusing. The young man watched my face, trying to decipher what I saw there. I couldn't hide the tremor in my hands. Every line of that letter was a scar I recognized. He had lied, yes. He had destroyed me. But he had also loved. And it was that cowardly love that consumed him in silence. Life has a strange way of giving back what's been taken from us. Sometimes, justice comes disguised as coincidence. Other times, it comes from the hands of those we least expect. I looked up at the boy. He seemed coward, as if afraid he'd gone too far. I wanted to say something, but no words seemed enough. I just closed the envelope and took a deep breath, trying to understand what fate wanted of me now. That piece of paper could change everything or nothing. It could free me, or it could trap me back in my memories. I didn't know yet. I only knew that the past had returned, and it wouldn't leave without leaving its mark. He opened his mouth to say something, but hesitated. The silence between us stretched until it became awkward. It was then that I realized there was more. Something he hadn't said yet. Something that might explain why, among so many cafes, among so many tables, he was the one who found me that day. And suddenly, fear and curiosity mixed within me like two rivers flowing in the same direction, about to flow into something bigger, something I wasn't yet ready to face. He hadn't said everything yet. I could feel it. The body speaks before the mouth, and his screamed silence. His gaze darted away. His hands moved restlessly, trying to hide a secret that weighed too heavily on such a young boy. The envelope between us seemed to pulse. It wasn't just paper. It was ancient flesh, stitched together with the threads of a story that never ended. He ran his hand through his hair and took a deep breath, like someone searching for courage in an empty well. Then he looked up and said, "There's one more thing." The sound of those 3 words rippled through the space between us like a tremor. I didn't respond, just waited. I've learned over time that the truth comes clearest when silence invites it. "He left something for you," he continued. "Something I should only give you if I ever knew for sure who you were." Inside, my heart reacted before my reason. A chill ran down my spine, but my eyes remained calm. "And now are you sure?" I asked. He nodded without speaking. From his pocket, he took a small, worn metal box, covered in rust stains. He placed it on the table with the same delicacy as someone placing an ancient secret on the altar of memory. The soft sound of the object touching the wooden top was enough to awaken all the ghosts I thought I'd left behind. The box looked like it had been forgotten in an attic for decades. The lock was nearly broken, and a thin layer of dust covered the corners. I touched it slowly, and the cold metal reminded me of the touch of hands that once took me away from what was mine. "He asked me to deliver it personally," the boy said. "He said that if I ever found it, perhaps his name could rest." His words blew through me like wind. Rest. As if regret also carried weight, and could only be alleviated by the truth. I opened the box slowly. Inside, a necklace. Thin, almost invisible, but familiar. I recognized it immediately. It was the same one he'd given me on our first anniversary. Long before the betrayal, before the scandal, before the silence. I'd sworn never to see it again, and yet there it was, intact, as if time had spared only that fragment. I felt the cold metal between my fingers. It was light, yet it felt like it weighed a ton. The memory came back vividly, whole. The day he'd placed it around my neck, saying that dignity was the only gold that time doesn't steal. Cruel irony, because that was exactly what he'd tried to take from me. I looked at the boy and saw unshed tears. He didn't know if he could speak, if he should console. There was a silent respect between us, as if we were both treading on sacred ground. "I thought about not bringing it," he confessed. "I was afraid of what it might cause." I shook my head slowly. "Fear is just the beginning. After it comes the truth." Outside, the sky was beginning to change. The clouds gathered in leaden hues, and the late afternoon light spread across the room like a warning. Half the space was plunged into shadow, half still bathed in sunlight. The perfect metaphor, past and present coexisting, vying for the same space within me. The sound of distant thunder echoed, and for a moment it felt like the heart of time beating. The boy watched me, waiting for a reaction I hadn't yet recognized. I touched the necklace one last time and returned it to the box. "Did he tell you why he kept it?" "Yes." He hesitated. "I said it was to remind you that not everything is lost when you make a mistake. That some things just change form." The words hung in the air, full of a meaning that still eluded me. And at the same time, something inside me began to rearrange itself. The old pain seemed less rigid, less sharp. As if somehow the truth, even belatedly, had the power to transform heaviness into learning. But along with the calm came another sensation, subtle and unsettling. The certainty that the box wasn't just a request for forgiveness. It was also a warning. I turned my gaze to him, trying to decipher what he was still hiding. The boy took a deep breath, holding back the words as if afraid to say them. The air around me seemed to hold its breath with me. And it was in that instant, in that suspended space between what had been said and what was yet to come, that I felt the presence of the past approaching again. Not as a memory, but as something alive, ready to reclaim what had yet to be revealed. He took a deep breath, as if fighting his own words, and the sound of the air escaping his lungs seemed to scratch the silence. I watched him silently, with that mixture of calm and distrust that life teaches us to cultivate after so many falls. There was something behind his eyes, a hesitation, an almost childlike fear, as if he knew that, once he said what he was about to say, nothing would ever be the same. The storm outside was already brewing. The wind pushed against the windows, making them vibrate with a hollow sound, and the smell of rain permeated the cafe. Everything seemed to conspire for that moment, the weather, the climate, fate. As if the universe were leaning slightly toward us, curious to see the outcome of a story that took too long to be told. "I read one last letter," he said, his voice breaking. "But it wasn't with the others. It wasn't for you. It was for me." The revelation fell onto the table like an invisible weight. He pulled a folded piece of paper from his pocket, crumpled, and placed it between us. The edges were worn, and the center was stained with something that looked like an old tear. I hesitated before touching it, perhaps because I already knew that some truths hurt more when they're finally spoken. "What did it say?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He swallowed hard. "She said that if I ever met you, I should listen to you. That I should learn from you what it means to be strong without having to hurt anyone." The words pierced me like a belated confession of forgiveness. He, the man who destroyed me, was now asking his own son to learn from me what he never knew how to do. It was as if time had turned around completely just to restore meaning to the pain. I looked at the boy, and suddenly I realized he wasn't the inheritor of guilt. He was the messenger of redemption. His presence there wasn't punishment, it was consequence. And maybe too, I'll start over. The sound of rain grew louder, beating against the glass like impatient fingers. The lights flickered, and the room began to empty. The waiter, who had been just another face before, now seemed like the link fate had hidden until I was ready to face him. As he spoke, I saw myself reflected in his eyes. Not the wounded woman, but the whole woman who survived it all. The one who learned that silence can be the highest form of response, and that dignity is a strength that time cannot erase. His letter, the words, the necklace. Everything seemed to align on a single invisible thread, as if each forgotten piece now fit together to form the complete picture. Still something was missing. A detail, a gesture, a truth that had not yet been told. And I knew. The story only ends when the last secret is revealed. He looked at me, hesitant, as if carrying a final confession. "I didn't come here by chance," he said finally. "I looked for you. I felt the blood drain from my face. Did you look for me? Why? Because you weren't just a memory to him. You were the reason for everything that came after." The roar of thunder drowned out everything else. For a moment, the sound of the world faded, leaving only my heart pounding, as if trying to mark the time of something inevitable. There was a thread of hope and fear dancing together within me, like two forces that don't cancel each other out, just observe each other. With each word he spoke, the room seemed to shrink. The distance between us diminished, but not just physically. It was a drawing closer of truths, of wounds, of centuries of silence piled up. I saw in his gaze the sincerity his father never had. And for the first time, I thought that perhaps forgiveness wasn't a gift, but a mirror. That conversation turned into something bigger than the two of us. It was about entire generations carrying the guilt of others, about how time tries to correct what vanity destroyed. And I, in the midst of it all, became a kind of witness. Not to the fall, but to the transformation. I wanted to tell him that sometimes justice arrives disguised as a reunion. That it's not about avenging the past, but about acknowledging what it taught us. But I kept quiet, because certain truths don't need to be spoken, only felt. There was a moment of silence. The kind of silence that feels like listening along with you. And it was then that I realized how much this story wasn't just mine anymore. It was already touching other people, other pains, other beginnings. Perhaps that's why, when someone hears something that triggers an old memory, they feel the urge to leave a trace, a word, a comment. Not to offer an opinion, but to say, "I understand too." The rain continued outside, insistent, almost poetic. And I knew deep down that the next sentence out of his mouth would change everything. He took a deep breath, rested his hands on the table, and looked at me with a firmness he hadn't shown before. Time seemed to hold its breath, waiting. Because what he was about to reveal wouldn't just be an explanation, it would be the turning point I'd spent my life waiting to hear. He stared at me, his eyes firm and moist, as if the truth were trapped in them, fighting to escape. The sound of the rain outside had become a constant, almost hypnotic sound, and the world seemed to narrow down to that table, that gaze, and the secret that still hung heavy between us. For a moment, I felt as if time were holding its breath. Everything waited for the next sentence. "My father didn't destroy you alone," he said finally. The sentence came like a crack. A bolt of electricity shot through my body, and the memory of the past came back like a slow-motion lightning bolt. He continued, hesitant, as if treading on shaky ground. "There were people helping. People who benefited from this. Who needed to get you out of the way." The words hung between us, cutting through the air. I stared at him, trying to decipher how much he knew. The room was nearly empty now. Chairs stacked in a corner, and the lamps cast long shadows on the wet floor. The atmosphere seemed to conspire with the revelation, as if every sound, every drop, were about to confirm a long-held suspicion. "Did he leave any names?" I asked, in a lower tone, almost a whisper. The boy nodded. He pulled another piece of paper from his pocket, this one small and torn, as if it had been hastily ripped from a notebook. When he placed it on the table, my heart raced. There were 3 names written there. 3. I read them slowly, one by one. And each name was a scar I thought I'd forgotten. People who smiled with me, who hugged me, who swore loyalty, and who, by all appearances, helped push me over the edge. The silence between us grew thick, heavy, almost tangible. I felt a strange mixture of relief and anger. Relief at finally seeing the traitors' faces clearly. Anger at realizing that, even after so many years, there were still people who slept peacefully with the evil they had done. The rain thickened. Outside, lightning streaked across the sky, illuminating the cafe for brief seconds. Each flash seemed to reveal more than the lamps could. That play of light and shadow reflected exactly what I felt inside. Clarity and confusion dancing side by side, without canceling each other out. The boy spoke softly, almost as if he were confessing something forbidden. He wrote that he was a coward, that when he realized what they were doing to you, it was too late, that he tried to make amends, but the fear of losing everything kept him quiet. Closed my eyes. The sound of drops hitting the glass sounded like distant applause, or perhaps judgment. I thought of how many times the silence of others had hurt more than the injustice itself. How many times fear had disguised itself as neutrality. I looked at the boy, and there was tenderness there. He carried the legacy of error, but also the courage to face it. And it was in this contrast that I found some hope, because where there is true repentance, there is room for a new beginning. Memories began to overlap in my mind. The face of the man who accused me, the cold expressions of those who remained silent, the loneliness that followed. And, at the same time, the feeling that I now had something I hadn't before, power. Not the power to destroy, but the power to decide what to do with the truth. The wind blew in through a crack in the window, making the letters' pages flutter. That's when I noticed the paper with the names had a dark stain in the corner. Blood. Maybe his. Maybe from another memory. The doubt, curiously, didn't scare me. It only confirmed the weight that piece of history carried. I looked up to find him still watching me, eager for a reaction. But what I felt was impossible to put into words. There wasn't enough anger to express the past, nor forgiveness great enough to heal the present. There was only awareness. He took a deep breath. I had to tell you. I couldn't keep knowing and pretending it was just a coincidence. I nodded slowly, letting the silence envelop us again. Deep down, I knew this revelation wasn't the end. It was just the point where the darkness began to show its edges. The next flash of lightning illuminated his face for an instant, and in that brief flash, I saw something that disturbed me. A new fear. Something he knew but hadn't yet had the courage to say. It was then that I understood. There was still a part of the story hidden. Something bigger, more dangerous, perhaps more intimate. And he was struggling with it, weighing the risk of revealing what could change everything. The storm raged outside, but the true thunder was still stuck in his throat. I could feel it. And when he finally decided to open his mouth, I realized that nothing I'd discovered so far would compare to what was about to come. He opened his mouth, then closed it, as if testing the temperature of an abyss. The rain had eased, and each drop that ran down the glass traced an uncertain path, like the versions of this story. I could hear the kitchen in the background, dishes stacked, water hitting metal, life trying to remain ordinary while the extraordinary gripped us by the throat. He lowered his eyes, and when he looked back at me, there was a weariness in them that wasn't just his. It was inherited. It was old. The last name, he began, and the air grew colder, is of someone who still works under my father's surname. Someone who prospered from his downfall. The word prosper took root at the table between us. I saw, for an instant, glass corridors, carpets attentive to the click of heels, meetings where politeness smells of iron. I saw the room from which I was removed with a detached smile, and another person sitting in my place as if wearing an expensive coat. The memory entered the cafe like the wind, eyes narrowing on my presence, empty compliments. "You're so elegant," said with the same mouth that whispered, "She doesn't fit in." He pushed the paper with the names away, as if it were burning. I recognized the third. I had shaken that hand. I had believed in that hand. Doubt and trust fought within me like two animals trapped in the same cage. The lamplight wavered, and his face became half shadow, half light. This break in light also split my chest. Half of me wanted to scream, half of me wanted to understand. "There's something more," he said, his voice scratchy. "It wasn't just greed. They were afraid of what you might prove." The phrase opened a door I hadn't known existed. Proof. The word lit a small light bulb in a room sealed shut for decades. I remembered a navy blue folder, spreadsheets I'd put together back in the days when work was still a place of faith. I'd anticipated errors they called adjustments. I'd organized numbers that, in the right hands, would go up in smoke. And when I questioned them, they smiled broadly, pulled out chairs, brought coffee, and under the table sawed off the legs of my chair. The wind blew in again, shifting a napkin, and I heard the sound of paper sliding. The yellowed envelope breathed. For a moment, I considered opening another letter, as if one more line could give me back my skin. But my body demanded a pause. It was as if I were in the corridor of an old hospital. Identical doors, blurred names, and the certainty that, behind one of them, lies the truth that hurts and heals at the same time. The boy massaged my wrist, a small human gesture that took me away for a second from the weight of the scene. In him I saw the two ends of this thread. The boy who inherited fear and the man who chooses courage. The duality both pacified and ignited me. Because the courage of others is beautiful, but it only becomes whole when it also becomes our own decision. "There's one last thing," he said, almost apologizing before he said it. "The name that thrived is giving a talk today. Nearby. They celebrate the inspirational trajectory." Irony spread through my chest like cold air. An inspiring trajectory. The ceiling seemed to lower slightly. I saw the auditorium as if I were there. White light, discreet arrangements, the acrylic panel on the stage, the microphone bending like an ear that only hears those who speak loudly. I saw flashes of photos, glass trophies, applauding hands, and rounded words pushing themselves into ears hungry for stories with easy endings. Between us, the little metal box waited. I ran my finger along the edge, felt the roughness, and a spark ran down my arm. The necklace, the paper with the names, the letter to my son. Everything pointed to the same place. A room too bright for my liking. I thought of the girl I once was, of the elevators that closed their doors a second before I arrived, of the smiles that faded when they saw me in the reflection. I thought of the times I was asked to speak more softly, dress more neutrally, accept more easily. I thought of how sweetness is demanded of us as a token of gratitude for being in the room. The kitchen dropped a plate, and the crack rang through the cafe like a signal. The boy jumped, I didn't. I've been trained not to tremble at the sound of other people falling. I looked out the window. The street had a damp sheen, and the puddles held pieces of sky. The auditorium building wasn't visible from there, but I sensed it as if it were a white, smooth mountain, made to mirror bales processed into beautiful words. "Why did you really come to me?" I asked, needing to hear something other than the past speaking for him. He breathed with a cutting honesty, so that his story would stop with me, and yours would continue with you. The sentence created a wrinkle in time. On one side, the woman who gathered her own dignity into pieces and kept it in silence. On the other, the woman who finally realizes that no amount of silence can disarm a comfortably worn lie. In the middle, a son handing over the key to a door his father never had the courage to open. A distant ray of light illuminated the depths of the cafe, and for a moment I saw my face in the glass. Stronger than I remembered, more tired than I would have liked, clearer than I had ever been allowed to be. Doubt and confidence still danced, but they no longer fought. They studied each other. And in that intimate study, something settled within me with a dangerous calm. It wasn't haste. It was precision. I folded the paper with the names and carefully put it away. I closed the box slowly, like someone closing a book at just the right point to return to it later without losing their breath. The boy waited, in no rush to hurry me along. The rain finally let up, and the cafe smelled of fresh bread again. Life, insolent, insisted on continuing. I looked up, and the weight on my chest shifted, like furniture being dragged to make room. The afternoon light broke through a new crack and traced the table. In the wake of that trace, an idea found its place, still unnamed. I left it there, breathing discreetly as if testing its own size. Outside, the traffic lights changed colors with discipline, and a group of people ran to escape the drizzle. The city played with its own rhythms, indifferent to what was stirring inside me. I rested my hands on the wood, feeling its grain like the braille reading of a story only I could decipher. And in the brief interval between the last drip of the gutter and the first roar of a bus engine, I realized that what lay ahead would not be simple, nor clean, nor immediate. But there was a path, and it began, clear and silent, exactly at the point where shadow and light had not yet decided which belonged to them. Light filtered through the cracks in the awning as I stood. The cafe felt different, lighter, as if the air had learned to breathe again. The boy remained silent, but something in his face had changed. The guilt had given way to a strange kind of serenity. He no longer had to carry the weight of his father, and I, for the first time in decades, no longer had to carry the weight of being the wound. I was now the scar. Outside, the still damp ground reflected a sky that was beginning to open. I walked to the door with firm steps, feeling the necklace in my pocket like a pulse, a living memory. Each drop that ran down the glass seemed to translate what was happening inside me. Something old was dissolving, but without disappearing. It was simply finding another way to exist. The boy approached, hesitantly, as if there was still something to say. "What are you going to do now?" he asked, his voice low and respectful. I took a while to respond. I watched the people on the sidewalk, the hurried coming and going, the reflections in the shop windows. The world hadn't stopped for my pain, and perhaps that was precisely what made it beautiful. "What I always do," I replied. "Continue. But now, in a way that the past doesn't recognize me." He smiled in a simple human way, like someone who understands that some battles no longer require blood, only truth. And the truth, I realized, wasn't what was in the letters, nor the names, nor the regrets. It was what remained of me after all this, the part that survived. I took one last look around the cafe. The empty tables, the smell of bread and freshly brewed coffee, the distant sound of rain still dripping from the tiles. Everything seemed to hold an echo of the scene we had just experienced, as if the place had witnessed something that would never be repeated. I left with the feeling that the world, despite being the same, looked at me differently. The street greeted me with the roar of engines and footsteps, everyday life resuming its course. But I no longer walked as before. There was a purpose in my silence, a precision in my breathing. The necklace in my pocket weighed less, but meant more. It was like a symbol of what I no longer needed to hide. As I walked, I imagined the auditorium a few blocks away, filled with lights and applause. People dressed for success, speeches rehearsed, eyes hungry for superficial inspiration. And in the midst of it all, a name being celebrated, a name that had cost me dearly. I thought about being there, about standing at the back of the audience, invisible and whole, only to watch the glow fade as the truth began to circulate on its own. Because now I had the power of the story, and the story, when told well, is the quietest and most devastating kind of revenge. I took a deep breath. The idea wasn't to destroy, but to return the pieces to their rightful place. The truth, when spoken at the right time, is like a mirror returned to the wall. Whoever has the courage to look will see what they've built. The breeze brought the smell of wet asphalt and a glimmer of hope. I knew this was just the beginning of a greater reckoning. Maybe there wouldn't be applause, maybe not even witnesses, but my every step now was an act of justice. A calm justice, served without shouting, without anger, only with the dignity they tried to steal from me. The young man was still watching me through the glass door. I looked up and gave him a brief nod. He understood. It was the kind of understanding that doesn't need words, the passing of a burden, the symbolic handing over of a cycle closing. I kept walking until the intersection. The light changed, and the sun finally broke through the clouds. The city felt whole and new. I felt the warmth touch my face, and that's when I realized. This wasn't just the end of a story. It was the rebirth of the one who told it. Many would call this forgiveness, but the true name is freedom. The freedom to look back and feel no burden, only the learning. The freedom to move forward without the fear of being mistaken for what they made of me. The freedom to know that when truth finds its time, justice doesn't need to be vengeful. It simply happens gracefully. And that's why, when someone comes here, when they feel the same lump in their throat and the same desire to see what's right prevail, something changes inside. Because stories like this aren't just told, they're lived. If it touched you, if it reminded you of something time tried to erase, it leaves its mark. A simple, silent gesture, but one that says, I too choose the truth. Today, when I look at my reflection in the window, I don't see the woman who lost. I see the woman who stayed. And she's the one who will carry on. Because life in the end always gives back, but only to those who have the courage to stand.